Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first video for class. I want to start by just saying my goal of the videos. So for all the videos, I'm hoping to show you some skills, some tips, some tricks in Excel that you can use that's relevant to the module that we're working on. So for this first video, we're starting with module 1, which for your book is really just chapter 1. Remember, your book refers to the chapters as modules instead. I will probably not show you every single detail in the text, so there's quite a lot of little details there that you can read through on your own, and they will also usually show you more than one way to do something. So although it's great to know more than one strategy to perform a task, as long as you know at least one and you're able to perform that task correctly and accurately, then that's fine with me. So in the videos, you may see me show you one way, or you may see me show you multiple ways, and that's fine too. But do know that I still strongly encourage you to read through that text and practice along with the text as well, since you may not get every little detail in our videos. But I'm hoping I can give you a good overview of the content and give you that kind of starting point to get in there and see some of it in action. So the first I'm going to do is I'm in our Blackboard course, and I am just going to click on this Excel file here. So this Excel file is one that is provided to you. It kind of works along with the example in the text, just so we can play along with the file and see how it works. So to get started, you can simply just click that. And you'll see that it pops up down here. And then you'll be able to click that and it will open Excel. Again, I'm doing this on my laptop right now using Excel 365, so it's just going to open in that program. But if you're using our virtual lab, then you could save this first somewhere on your desktop or your laptop, and then upload that to that virtual lab, that Aporto system as well. Now, I already have it open, so let me just change my share screen so you can see what it looks like. And this is that first document. And again, I just kind of want to use it to explain some key features of Excel and some different pieces here that you may notice. So first of all, when you open, you will see all of these different boxes on the screen. We refer to these as cells in Excel. And you can select the box just by typing, just by clicking it, excuse me. So if I can just click around on my screen and select all these different boxes. If there is a box that has something in it, you'll also notice that it will read up here as well. And if it doesn't, it will just show you a blank. It will also tell you which cell that you're looking at over here on the left. So this is your cell reference. And you'll notice that this box lines up with column D and with row 2. So that's why it has the name D2. If I click a different box, let's say this one right here, I can see that it lines up with column C and also with row 6. So this is cell C6. And again, it will have that here for you as well. But you can also just read it right off the grid. So many times when we're doing formulas and applications and things like that, you'll hear me refer to the cell reference more so than the data. So I may say, hey, find cell, B7 rather than find the number 1, right? It's a little bit easier, so then you know exactly what I'm pointing to. It's a very similar idea to graphing, right? When we have coordinates like X, Y coordinates, this is sort of like that, where we're giving you both pieces and it's telling you exactly what part of that table or that sheet to look at. So the overall program here is an Excel workbook, and some of them may have just one sheet, they may have multiple sheets. And if you look at the bottom here, this one's already pretty much kind of done for us, but you see all these different tabs, and these are different sheets in the same Excel workbook. So when this is saved or when it's on your computer, it's considered one file, one workbook, but it has multiple sheets, just like a document could have multiple pages, right? If you're writing a paper or something. And you can click back and forth through them very quickly. You just click on the tab at the bottom that you want. You'll see that it will pretty much bold and underline, and that's how you know that that's the tab that you're viewing. That's the sheet that you're viewing. And again, you can just kind of keep clicking along. Again, this Excel one is really nice and highlighted and nicely organized already. But that's how you can change sheets. And you can see here that there's a lot more. So if you have multiple sheets, you do see these arrows on the bottom left here that will allow you to also scroll through your sheets if you don't see them all. Now, you can edit these sheet names as well, and you can do it in a couple ways. You could just double click on that, and you'll see the cursor pops up, and I can go ahead and delete that name, or I'm just going to make something up here. What was this? Conference history. Right, so I don't even remember what it was called before, but I can go ahead and edit that. And then when I'm done, I can just hit enter or just click out of it. You can also right click on those tabs and perform other operations. So you could rename it that way. You could also delete the sheet. So let's say you're like, I'm not using that sheet. It's not helpful. I don't need it. You could delete the entire sheet. You could also move it or insert other sheets as well. So that's just a little bit that you can do. You can move around sheets also just by dragging them. So if I want to move my room cost sheet, I can just hold my mouse down and go ahead and drag that. And you can see that I now changed the order of the sheets as well. And again, I did that just by clicking on one of the sheets. I hold my mouse down and then I just drag it to where I want to move it. I can move it forward, I can move it backwards, and it will change the order of those sheets for me as well. If you want to create more sheets, you'll see a little plus symbol here. So you can go ahead and click New Sheet. And then typically sheets are just called Sheet 1, Sheet 2, Sheet 3, etc. to start until you rename them. So again, I can double click on that, or I can right click to rename that sheet. And I don't know, let's call it extra expenses or something like that. So maybe I have other things I need to talk about and include in this workbook, in this document. So I can add those sheets, I can move them around, I can edit the names as much as I need to. Typically for your sheets, you probably want your most important sheets in the front, right? Because particularly if you have a lot of sheets, people are not maybe going to read the whole way down sometimes. So you do want your most important stuff likely in the first sheet or two, so that people have easier access to those as well. But it is nice to have all of those sheets available for you. Up top, you also see other commands that your book is going to reference. So we're on the home button here. So this is how you can change your font, the size of the font and things like that. That's already defaulted to when you open up either a new workbook or one that's already created. You can change the alignment of the cells. So here they're sent, on the downside. You can change them from center to left to right and so on. So it's very similar to Word, where you have that option to edit the font and things like that. And I won't go through all of them, but you have those other features too here. If I click insert, I could add in tables, illustrations, charts. So we'll get to some of this stuff later on. I have the draw feature, I have data. Formulas is going to be a really big one for us as well. So your book will reference these different tabs for you and different parts of those tabs. So it may say something like go to home. Let's just type something in here. I'm just going to write title. And maybe I want to change that font, right? So it may say go to home and change the font. So maybe we want to change it, I don't know, to something different, right? And we can go ahead and just select that cell and go ahead and change that font or change that size as needed. So you'll see reference to these different tabs in your textbook as well. So maybe we want to change the alignment. Maybe I want it to be centered instead, right? So I can go ahead and notice these different things as I go through. And we'll go through a lot of these together and you'll see them in your text, but they will note usually specifically where they want you to look to make these changes. Now, if you have a touchscreen, you can use that as well. So in Office 365 that I have on my computer, I don't have the option to switch to touchscreen, but I could just touch my screen. So I do have a touchscreen laptop and I could go ahead and do that. But in the virtual lab, you do have that feature as well that's more manual. So let me see if I can bring that up for you. Let's see. Let's stop sharing for a second. All right, now let's share my other screen. So I already went in and I opened, there we go. I already went in and I opened my virtual desktop as well, just so you can see the slight differences, again, between different versions of Excel. So here, and I don't have this on my Office 365, there is a little button up top here in the Aporto system, in that virtual desktop, where you can click and actually change between mouse mode and touch mode. So if you have a touch screen and you want to use that touch screen mode, you can switch it manually here on that virtual desktop. In 365, I don't have that, but I do have a touch screen, so I could just touch my screen and it will still pretty much work the same way. But you do have that feature. So I wanted to point that out because it's just one perfect example of how there are some slight differences in different versions of Excel. So if you're in one form and you're like, I don't see that feature, where is it? Well, go ahead and try our virtual test desktop, because maybe it's in the full version of Excel and you want to access it that way. If you don't care so much about touchscreen mode, I know personally I rarely use my touchscreen. Once in a while I do, but I don't really like it for Excel. I prefer to use my mouse pad. Then I'm fine not having that feature, so I can go ahead and keep using Office 365. So again, just kind of a piece that I wanted to point out there, that you may notice those differences. So if you're not seeing it somewhere, try a different version of Excel, and that could be where it is. This is just a blank workbook here that I opened. And when you open Excel, you'll see that, your initial blank workbooks, when you open them, are called book 1. And if I had multiple open, it'd be book 1, book 2, book 3, etc. So as you're going through, you do want to save those and name them. And again, you can see here, this is a blank one, so it just says sheet 1. So if I want to add other sheets, they're going to just call them sheet 2, sheet 3, and then I can go in and rename those cells and rename my workbook. Now, when I'm all done, I do recommend you save things, of course. So if I click the File button here, the File button allows me to do many things. So I can create a new workbook. So if I want a new blank workbook, I can just go ahead and click this here. I can open something that I already have. So I can go into my files and open a workbook that I may have already saved and been working on. And of course, I can save the workbook that I'm on now. So I've never saved this one before, so we're going to use that Save As feature, and I'm just going to save it in my desktop for now. And let's call this, how about test book or something like that. So I can go ahead and save that, choose where I want to save it, and save my workbook. And you do want to save your work periodically. Sometimes students have it set up where things automatically save for you. I tend to not use that because if I make a mistake, I don't really want that to automatically get saved. So I am more of a manual saver, but you have to be careful. I've definitely forgotten to save things before, and it's not fun when you're like, oh, I forgot to save that, and I closed it, and that was it. So just make sure that you're saving things pretty regularly as you're going through when you're doing your work, particularly if you like something. So if you like the way it looks and you're like, okay, I don't have any mistakes right now, I like this, save it, and then keep editing. And then when you clean that part up, save it again. So you want to just kind of remember to do that too. Now, there are some shortcuts here that you can use, and I'm not going to go through every shortcut. I'll let you use your textbook for that. But, for instance, I clicked the File Save, and there's a Save button here too, the File Save button manually. But if I hold my mouse over that Save button, it actually shows you the shortcut. So there are a lot of shortcuts in Microsoft, and this one says to press Control plus S. So you don't actually press the plus key, it's just telling you which keys to hold together. So if I press Control, and I know you can't see me, but I'm doing this, and then I press S, then it will go in and will save that file again for me. So again, you do have a lot of shortcuts that you're welcome to use. And I encourage you to read your textbook if you like shortcuts as well. And a lot of times if there is one, like I said, for this save feature, it will show it to you if you hold your mouse over it. So that's a helpful tool here. I'm going to go back into our other workbook. I think it's this one. Great. So here's our other workbook just to kind of see it again. And again, you may notice again some slight differences here. I'm back in that 365 on my laptop rather than the virtual desktop. So you're more than welcome to use either feature that you like. Let's see, I've already noticed that we can change our sheets that we're working on. We've talked about that. We've talked about how to rename them. We talked about how to click around within a sheet as well. You can scroll too. So if there's a lot of data, let's see if I can find one. You'll see on the right here, you have that scroll bar and you can scroll down to see the data. And you also have a scroll bar for left and right too. So sometimes we may have a lot of data. Some doesn't have too much. But you may need to scroll up and down to see all of it, or even left to right. You can also do it by, clicking a cell and then using the arrow keys on your keyboard and just either go down, up, left, or right. So you have those functions. You have page down and page up, which move it a full kind of screen's view as well. So there's different ways that you can go ahead and move around that worksheet, and I encourage you to try them all. I tend to be a scroll bar person personally, unless I'm just going a few squares, in which case I just use my arrow keys on my laptop and just kind of click around that way. So that's another way you can do it. Again, there are some features here for shortcuts. So one shortcut is using Control and then the Home button on your PC. So if I hit Control and Home, it will bring my cell back to A1. This can be helpful if you have a lot of data and you're trying to kind of navigate that sheet. That Control Home will just bring you back to A1. And then Control End will bring you to the last cell. I know it's hard to see, but you saw it kind of move down here. So Control End will bring you to that last cell that has data in it. And again, that's most helpful if you have a sheet that has a lot of data that you're trying to navigate. There are examples where you may have hundreds of rows of data and it's a lot harder to scroll through. So those two features can be very helpful as well. And again, those are just two ways that you can go and kind of work through the cell there and things like that. All right. So another way to find a cell too is if you want to, I'll show you this one last trick, is on the Home button here. If you go over to Editing, you do have one that's a Find feature. So it looks like a little magnifying glass, and you can do Find and select and hit Go To. And Go To will take you to that specific cell. So maybe I want to find cell C11 and I hit OK, then it will pop my active cell to C11. So that's where like my mouse is. It's in C11 right now. So that's just another feature. And again, that's under this Find and Select key and using Go To. Again, most helpful if you have a lot of data that you're trying to comb through and you need that like one cell and maybe it's over in column Z and row 1000, right? And it's a little bit more difficult to find. So you have that feature as well. All right, a couple more things here, and then I think we'll end this video and start another one. You can also select more than one cell. So far we've just kind of been clicking around with single cells, but if you want to select more than one cell, you can just select the first cell that you want, and then hold your mouse down and drag it to the final cell. So I'm going to start and just select my different meal descriptions. So I'm going to click the first cell that I want to highlight. I'm going to hold my mouse down, and then I'm just going to drag and select. And my cells are selected here. So it's not just the one in gray, it's also the one I started with, which doesn't get highlighted, but the rest get highlighted to show you. And you can kind of see this light green box around it, which shows you which cells are highlighted. And that's helpful when we get to things like copying and pasting and that sort of stuff. So sometimes we may want to select a whole group of items and copy them or move them around our workbook. And we can do that by holding the mouse down. And if I don't want it, I can just click anywhere else and we'll unselect. You can also select more than one group. So let's say I want to do 2 columns. I can select my first column. And then I want to make sure I am pressing the Control button while I do my next column. And that will allow you to kind of pause and take a break in between 2 different groups of data. So I select my first column as normal. I just kind of select and I can hold that mouse down. That's one way to do it. And then what I do is I do press the control button, and then I can select my next group. So we can do it that way as well. And again, more than one way to do things. So that's the way that I tend to do it. And I just hold that mouse down and I can select very quickly. But you can also use your keys, like your shift key, to help select and things like that too. So here what I did is I selected my first cell, I held my shift key down, and then I selected the last cell, and it will select that whole group for me. So that's another way to do it if you don't like using your mouse as much. When I say mouse, I don't have a physical mouse. I just have the touchpad on my laptop. So that works here too. You don't have to select just columns. You can select, any groups that you want. Typically, they would be cells touching, or then you would have to take a break and use that control feature to select the next group. So that's the only difference there is you can select as many as you want as long as they're connected. And if you want to separate different groups, then you would use that control feature to go ahead and select. All right, so I think we've done a little bit of playing around here with this, and I encourage you to try it at home. So just open up any document or a brand new document and just start playing around with the different features. Practice changing names on sheets, practice adding sheets, deleting sheets, opening files, saving files, just kind of doing all that basic stuff here to get a little bit more acclimated with Excel. And then when you're ready, you can just go close your program. Now, I do recommend always saving before you close, because usually I've done something important that I want to save. So I would save my program first. So you can just click that file, save or save as, depending on if you've saved it yet before. And then once you're done, you're just going to click this little X in the screen, and that will close your entire workbook for you. So practice with that stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.